Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present at the Health Revolution Summit. My name is Dr. Tushar Mehta. Thanks to Rupa Ben for inviting me. Now, a little bit about me. I am a physician from Canada. I practice family and emergency medicine, mostly emergency medicine these days, and do some international health, formerly in India and now in Haiti. I have a strong interest in ecological issues and issues around plant-based diet, especially. I have no financial disclosures, and you can find me on those Twitter handle and on Instagram. Now, I am the co-creator of this website called Plant-Based Data, and I have been invited to speak a little bit about this this project as well. But we are going to be reviewing the importance of scientific research in plant-based lifestyle. So this is going to be a short presentation, and I'm going to cover the following topics here. I'm going to talk about, what is science and why is science important? We're talking about diet and nutrition, and of course, this applies to so many other things too. The tools that we use to evaluate the quality of scientific publications, the problem of misinformation, and issues relevant to plant-based science in South Asia in particular, and also generally. And then I'll overview some of the things about plantbaseddata.org and how to optimally use the website. Now, I love this slide. B.K.S. Iyengar practiced all his life and died yesterday. This slide says he died at the age of 96. Kulwant Singh drank whiskey all his life and died at the age of 99. And the moral of the story, whiskey gives you a 3-year edge over yoga. Now, this is kind of funny, and we all know it's ridiculous, but these are the kinds of logic that you see frequently by people when they're talking about anything related to nutrition, lifestyle, and so many other things. And that's where science comes in. Now, here's another interesting thing. There's all these plant-based athletes, and some of you may recognize at least one of them from the Game Changers movie. And what does that mean when we put forward certain icons or athletes or whatever, and we say that, hey, this represents plant-based diet and health? What's the place of such anecdotes in the realm of science when we evaluate diet and nutrition, let's say? Okay, so first of all, what is science? Science is empirical knowledge based on scientific method. Okay, now there's something called inductive and deductive reasoning, which I won't quite get into, but the main idea is that we have ideas that we then test with experiments or other forms of real world data. And based on that, we either reinforce or refute our theory or hypothesis or the things that we were testing for. We build on more information, and then we use that to create new research questions, new hypotheses, new theories or updated theories, which we then continue to test and update. And the cycle goes on. And that is the scientific method in short, all right? Now, when it comes to medical and nutritional science, there's two mainstays of science. Firstly, there's something called basic science. Now, in medicine, and let's say nutrition is a subset of medicine, we consider basic science to be biochemistry, molecular biology, physiology, immunology, cell biology, etc. The mechanisms by which our body works, our physiology works, and the different components involved. And then there's clinical science. So the basic science, of course, we don't know the infinite complexity of the human body, but we know so many things about how the body works, and there's an always increasing amount of knowledge. And then clinical science, though, it's how something works in real life. Let me give you an example. For example, we may have a medication which we know works on beta receptors within the body. And let's say these medications are called beta blockers. And then we hypothesize that these beta blockers can lower our blood pressure, right? And we figure out the shape of the molecule, which receptor it works on in the body, and that would constitute issues around basic sciences. Now, the clinical science is, well, if somebody's using these things and we lower somebody's blood pressure, in real life, does this actually help us? Does it reduce our rates of heart attack or stroke? Does it help us live longer? Does it reduce morbidity and mortality? Okay, so clinical science is the effect on us in the real world. And we don't always know the basic science. We don't know every aspect of how beta blockers work. We know many aspects, but not every aspect. And so we don't always know how they're going to work in real life when there's so many different factors involved in our own physiology and our lifestyle and everything that we do. So clinical science will help us know whether this is beneficial in terms of our suffering or our lifespan, etc. These things are not easy to study, but clinical science has come a long way over the past 20, 30 years. And it's very much based on statistics. For example, when we study a beta blocker or a cholesterol medication, we might have thousands of people enrolled in a trial for a few years, and then see how many heart attacks, strokes, cancers are reduced, and which group lives longer. That's an example of how clinical science would work, okay? Now, there is a hierarchy of evidence when we're collecting these statistics. Now, you can see the pyramid over there. There are something called systematic reviews, meta-analysis, which we consider to be on the top. And this article from the BMJ, which is called Perspective New Evidence Pyramid. And so they're just sort of questioning some of the delineations that are in the typical hierarchy of evidence, showing that there are some fuzzy lines between them. But generally speaking, we consider systemic reviews, meta-analysis, to be the highest form of evidence, and randomized control trials to be the next most important, but cohort studies as well. And then finally, case-controlled studies and case reports and case series are considered low levels of evidence. But the model is not completely infallible. For example, if you have bad studies and bad data going into your randomized trial or your cohort studies, and bad studies making up your systemic review and meta-analysis, then you're going to have bad conclusions, okay? And it's not always infallible as to which type of evidence is the best. And we're going to go into that a little bit more. The quality and limitations of source data must be analyzed. You have to look at methodology of any study that's being done. Look for biases and find out funding sources and qualities that make a study a very poor study. We're going to go over some of those things. Now, when it comes to medical and nutritional science, there's often a debate between the two higher levels of evidence as proposed by this hierarchy. As you can see over here, there's systematic reviews, but then individual studies are going to be composed of either randomized trials or cohort studies. Those are going to be the better of the studies that we're going to refer to. But there's often a debate as to are randomized trials always the superior form of study? Some people will say that cohort studies, basically a cohort study is when you're looking at a population over time and measuring certain characteristics of that population and then certain outcomes in that population. Many people consider that an inferior form of evidence. Randomized trials are when you take a factor, an intervention factor. For example, if you have a large population and then you give a medication to one segment of the population and a placebo or an alternate medication to another part of the population, and watch them over time and see the different outcomes that happen, that would be an example of a randomized trial. Now, as it happens, most drug trials are usually randomized trials, okay? Many of the things that we do in medicine are randomized trials, but in medicine, we also do have some cohort studies that we use, okay? Now, these randomized trials are good when you're looking at limited factors. For example, whether we should take a medication or not take a medication for blood pressure, and is it beneficial in the long run? So when you're looking at limited factor that can be studied in an ethical manner to produce results in a realistic timeline for statistical analysis, all right? And nutrition studies do also use some randomized trials, depending on the factor that is being studied and the trial being conducted. But nutrition studies often rely on cohorts. Okay, so when you're looking at a large population or group and studying what they eat, surveying the population and watching them over many years, and then finding different outcomes that happen. For example, if you have a group that is more plant-based or eating more animal foods, when you're looking at the cohort, you compare the people who are more plant-based or more vegetarian or whatever to the people who are eating more animal foods. And then you watch them over time and you see, you check for the results, for example, more mortality or cardiovascular outcomes, or heart attacks or strokes or diabetes, etc. Okay, so that's how the way a cohort study would generally be done, is watching a population. And these often receive unfair criticism, especially from meat promoters. But these are important because many of the things that we study can't be done in terms of a randomized trial. Aside from nutrition, most of the data we have showing that smoking is harmful is not from randomized trials. That wouldn't be ethical to do that, to expose people to smoking or not smoking, or expose babies to secondhand smoke in a randomized trial to find out if it had a harmful effect. What we do is we use cohort studies showing people who are exposed to smoking or not exposed to smoking over a long time period and see what kind of things happen to those people. So did one group get more heart attacks or die younger or get more cancer, etc.? And that's the way we get data around smoking. Same for drugs and alcohol. The impacts of those things in the long term, those are not gleaned through randomized trials. Seatbelts, environmental toxins, child safety, all kinds of things are not done through, we don't get data through randomized trials to see if certain things are worse for people, okay, to see if they're harmful in the first place. And that also goes along with dietary things, to know if ultra-processed foods or animal fats or animal products are beneficial or harmful. We use cohort studies for the most part, okay? Now, when we're looking at a cohort study, we want to, or even a randomized trial, we want to analyze certain things about the study to see if it is a good study. We're going to look at the number of subjects to see if a trial is properly statistically powered to give you the to answer the questions that you're looking for. Is it of sufficient duration? For example, if we're studying heart disease in a group of 100,000 individuals, depending on their diet, if we only look and study that population for 6 months, well, people don't get a heart attack over 6 months. You wouldn't get enough heart attacks to get statistics to see if there was a harm or a benefit. However, if you followed that population for 10 years or 20 years, then you'll get a cumulative number of heart attacks or deaths, and you can see which group had a greater benefit or harm. Now, another very, very important thing to do when we are analyzing trials is to see what in somebody's diet is compared to the alternatives. For example, if you're studying the effect of animal-based foods in versus plant-based foods in a population, and you look at a group of people who are eating more animal products, and then the other group eating less animal products or no animal products, the question is, what are they eating instead of those animal products? So you may be comparing the people who are eating chicken or red meat or something like that, Compared to what? So are we comparing them to people who are eating a bunch of starches, ramen noodles and Maggi noodles and white rice? Or are we comparing them to people who are eating whole food plant-based proteins, etc.? So you want to look at one group compared to the other group and actually know what they're eating instead of the animal products, okay? And that's going to be very important in terms of the outcome of your study. You're going to look at population characteristics. For example, in the EPIC study, you had people who were eating more conventional diets and comparing them to those eating more plant-based diets, including vegans. But the vegans in that study happen to be more animal rights type people. And during that time period in Europe, when they were studying these vegans, actually they were mostly in the UK, or all in the UK, those vegans had very low rates of B12 supplementation. And we know that B12 supplementation is very important for health. And if you had a vegan group that you're comparing the meat group to, and the vegan group is not supplementing B12, there may be disadvantages. Compared to the Adventist studies, which look at Seventh-day Adventists in Canada and the United States, those plant-based groups did supplement with B12. So we see somewhat different outcomes in the Adventist study compared to the EPIC study. Or we can compare to the UK Biobank, which wasn't comparing vegans versus vegetarians versus meat eaters. They were just looking at the incremental effects of people of a general population who tend to eat more animal products and less animal products. And of course, there was a subset of vegans in there, which they also studied. But again, it was more of a mainstream population overall and not selecting groups by their self-identified diet. And then we can also talk about the nurses health study and the health professionals follow-up study done in Harvard. And we can see that there's differences that they had, the thing there is they're studying mainstream population of nurses and doctors and who are more uniformly educated and professionals. And you're comparing these groups who are very similar to each other, but may have dietary differences. So you're isolating for other demographic factors, which brings us to this next point. So when you're looking at a population and differences in consuming their food, we should look at their socioeconomic status between one group and the other and see that they're not very different. And a bad example is the Pure study, where they compared people from very different countries that had so many different factors affecting them just based on their demographic and the country that they originated from, that the groups should not even be compared to each other when we're looking at specific dietary factors. We have now the Healthy Plant-Based Index, which is showing us, which are studies that compare people who are eating more plant-based, but the healthfulness of their diets. Are they eating refined carbohydrates instead of animal products, or are they eating whole food, such as whole grains, beans, and lentils, more as part of their diet? Okay, you have to analyze a study in terms of the outcomes being measured. For example, we may look at heart attacks and death from heart attack, but the most important factor to study is actually all-cause mortality when we're studying like who lives longer, because somebody may die from have less heart attacks in one group, but then they may die more from other causes, and in the end there may be no benefit or even a detriment in the group that seems to have less heart attacks. But when we look at all-cause mortality, we see that a population has a net benefit or not from a certain dietary factor that you're looking for. We should be looking for missing factors in the different comparison groups. For example, are we distinguishing between refined carbohydrates and whole grains when we look at a plant-based versus animal-based diet? And that leads us to what replaces what in the diet, which we've already sort of discussed. But other factors are something like, are we using more trans fats or other types of unhealthy fats when we're comparing the diet groups. Are we replacing meat with a population that's eating other forms of saturated fat like palm oil or coconut oil? That's going to be an important question. And we should look at the dose response changes in diet. So when we look at a group that is eating a certain amount of animal protein, can we compare them when we're looking at the other group? Is there a significant difference in the amount of animal protein consumed, enough to cause a difference over the size of population and the duration of the study? Okay, so those are some of the factors that we should be analyzing any study for. Other things that we should look at in studies are statistical adjustments that are made in the study, because sometimes these statistical adjustments are helpful, but sometimes they grossly distort the results of a study because they're just trying to adjust for populations that are too different from each other and therefore not comparable in the first place. We should make sure we don't look at single studies to draw conclusions, okay? If somebody shows you a study showing that plant-based diet is better for heart disease, don't make a conclusion based on that one study or 2 or 3 studies even. Look at the larger body of evidence. Look at in something like, for something like heart disease, there are tens or even hundreds of studies looking at heart disease and diet. So let's look at the trend in the body of evidence after also looking at the quality of studies involved and picking the ones that we think are best according to the criteria I mentioned above. And there are some other ongoing issues when we're looking at studies too. For example, we may find that certain diets should help us live longer, but over time realize that modern medicine, even in the diet group that's inferior, modern medicine will actually help reduce their mortality and make them live longer too. So that is something that's not very well accounted for in most of our studies. And perhaps one of the reasons why when we look at studies showing, that compare meat eaters or those consuming a lot of animal products to people who are on more healthy diets, there's not much of a mortality difference because modern medicine also helps the bad diet group live longer, okay? That also applies to helping plant-based dieters live longer, should they be consuming a lot of bad foods and refined carbohydrates, etc. Okay. The other thing that we got to look at is the funding of studies. Industry misinformation is very rampant. And when an industry, for example, the junk food industry or the meat industry or somebody like that industry that is adding a lot of sugars, refined carbohydrates, salts, or fats, or trans fats, or animal products to your food, and then they're conducting the study, they have an economic benefit from showing that their product is not harmful, okay? And we used to get a lot of studies that were funded by the Milk Board in Canada or the US or the Milk Marketing Association or whatever it is, or the egg industry group or whomever. And they used to say that in the study, this is funded by the egg whatever group, okay? But now it's harder to track that because industry often uses nonprofit organizations with nice sounding names that you wouldn't immediately know was funded themselves by the meat industry, egg industry, or dairy industry. Okay, so the animal agriculture industry will fund some other group that sounds great, and then that group will then fund the study. Okay, now this is what the fossil fuel industry does, the smoking industry, pharma, animal agriculture, junk food industries. They're all doing these kinds of things. and often partnering with universities and other institutions that have, you know, their mission statements are good and what they want to do sounds very good, but are still then very entwined with industries and then produce biased research. In fact, animal agriculture, junk food industries, and the other industries I mentioned above have are multi-billion dollar industries, sometimes approaching, half a trillion dollar, or more, global revenues and so forth. And so they have, hundreds of millions of dollars involved in their marketing and promotion in different ways. And so they actually fund biased researchers or fund researchers as part of their marketing and lobbying. They're able to lobby governments and influence nutrition guidelines, nutrition policies. They can fund departments of universities, etc. So the different levels of misinformation and industry bias goes very deep. And they're also, as I mentioned, getting very good at obscuring the fact that they're funding these things, and going through organizations that sound really good. Okay, so in my opinion as well, we should be careful that the plant-based industries, as they grow, if they are funding studies, there's going to be a similar bias, or potentially a similar bias. And hopefully, when we do research regarding plant-based foods, it should be free of industry funding as well. Okay, and we want to generate interest in academic institutions so that academic institutions without industry funding will pursue and make efforts for the kinds of studies that show the results of healthy plant-based diets. Okay, so now, as I mentioned again, I'm going to say it again here. Let me just move my picture here. Don't form an opinion based on one or a few studies. Now, sometimes all you have are a few studies, so you're going to use the best information available. But for subjects that do have lots of studies, look at the body of evidence and the characteristics of the trials that are going into that body of evidence. Okay. Now, let's review a study that I think is a very good study. Okay, noting that no study is perfect. Okay, now here's one called animal and plant protein intake and all-cause specific mortality, results from 2 prospective U.S. cohort studies. It's published in 2017 in the journal called JAMA. Now, of course, JAMA is a great journal, so we'd love to see articles published in these important journals. But note that no journal, no matter how good it is always going to publish quality studies, because even in the big journals, we see lots of studies that end up being biased or funded by industry, etc. Okay, now this study follows the nurses' health study cohort as well as the physicians cohort in the health professionals follow-up study, and there's over 100,000 study subjects followed for an average of 22 years. So that's great. The numbers are great, and followed for, in terms of the number of subjects and the duration of the study, that is a duration where we can look at how many people died in each group and show a difference over time, and to see who has more of an advantage. Now, it has it shows. Now, we were not studying in this research project. They were not studying vegans versus vegetarians. They were just having groups of physicians and nurses, again, who have, this is great because they're mainly in the United States. I think they're all in the United States in this cohort. And so they're all in one country. They have a similar educational background. The nurses all have a similar educational background to each other, give or take. And a similar sort of, you can think about their incomes and demographic characteristics are going to be more similar than people who are of different professions and different socioeconomic strata, and same with the physicians group. Okay, they're all doctors. Okay, now of course there are differences between people, but they have a similar level of education and affluence and etc. Okay, so it's a good group because of their baseline similarities and large enough and followed for a long enough time. So that's good. Those are good things. And what we then compare are incremental amounts of animal protein versus plant protein that were being measured and surveyed for these people, showing that there were decreases in overall mortality for people who consumed, who substituted more and or were eating more plant-based protein instead of animal protein in the following ways. We showed, for 3% of energy substituted from animal to plant protein, we found maybe about a 6% benefit when substituting poultry, so having plant-based protein instead of poultry. The same for fish, a little bit better for dairy, and then processed meat and unprocessed red meat and eggs were shown to be even more harmful and therefore more beneficial when we substituted for plant-based protein. Okay, all right. So we can then see there's a difference in all-cause mortality, as I mentioned. That's the most important parameter when we're looking at mortality, but then also looking at cause-specific mortality to see who's dying of what, whether it's heart disease, cancers, etc. And we can see incremental benefits for increasing plant protein that are there. And so this is showing also a nice dose response, that the more plant protein that people are using instead of animal protein, the greater the incremental benefits. So that's important because that helps show us more about causality there and dose response. Okay, let's go to the next. Now, the good aspects, I've already mentioned many of them, so I'm not going to go through that. Now, some of the weaknesses of the study, it does not account for healthy plant-based index. So we don't always know that a person is consuming more plant-based protein and less animal protein, but are they using the best types of plant-based proteins? Are they consuming whole grains and all the other things that they should be substituting? Or are they having more protein from like ramen noodles or white rice or white bread and things like that? So this study doesn't give us such information. And the differences between plant protein consumption are moderate. And so that's overall good enough differential consumption to show a difference. But sometimes we'd like to even see greater differences in consumption and see what that shows over the long run. But anyways, great study. All right. Now, there are some that are very problematic. For example, the PURE study, the prospective urban-rural epidemiology study, which is comparing people in 19 different countries. And these countries are as different as Canada, India, China, and Zimbabwe. Now, if you take somebody from Canada and compare them to somebody from India and China or Zimbabwe, you're going to get very different results. And this study shows that, hey, people consuming more animal protein seem to be better off. But there were such vast differences between socioeconomic status between these the different people in the different countries that it's just a mess of data. And what you might be showing is that the people, or you're probably showing is that the people who are the most well off tend to consume the most meat. And then you try to statistically adjust for that. And there's just no possible way that you can truly make a relevant statistical adjustment for baseline differences in demographics, the country you live in, affluence, etc. And so this study seemed very biased because you just have poor people consuming starch-based diets and more rich people consuming more animal-based foods, and showing that, hey, the guys who eat more animal foods seem to be better off, but there's so many other reasons that you just can't account and control for mathematically. Okay, the Nutri-Rex studies. There's some studies showing that the effect of lower versus higher red meat consumption on cardiometabolic and cancer outcomes. Sorry for the little typos there. But again, this was a study that was funded by industry, or that some of the researchers had industry ties, but they didn't disclose those ties. And again, using inappropriate criteria, showing the superior, that sort of presuppose the superiority of randomized trials, and downgrade the level of evidence from cohort studies, sort of not counting what are the aspects of cohort studies that could actually make them really high quality. And since these studies came out, there was a lot of people who analyzed the problem with the study and showed what kind of criteria could be used to evaluate cohort studies and show which ones are higher quality and can be used as good quality evidence regarding diet. All right. Now, in addition to misinformation and bias that comes from the big industries involving animal agriculture or junk food, etc., there's also misinformation that exists in the vegan community, including the vegan medical community. And these are causes for concern as well. Most of the cases I've seen are not necessarily due to financial incentives, but some of them may be as well. Okay, so I'm not excluding that some people have financial ties to their sort of worldview or the things that they promote. But here are some of the things that we see commonly. We may see exaggerated or magical claims about vegan diet or specific types of vegan diet or plant-based diet, saying that, oh, eat like this and your cancers disappear or something like that. People saying that B12 is not needed, and also a lack of emphasis in the plant-based or vegan medical community, especially in places like India, for the for the availability of cheap and accessible vitamin B12. Okay, I believe that the vegan medical community or plant-based community, vegetarian community in developing countries, especially someplace like India, should really emphasize that we need a easily accessible, cheap B12 supplement that you can buy anywhere, almost anywhere in the country, in India or in South Asia. And that's going to be really important. So health professionals advocating for this to be available, and advocating that companies produce this and sell this and get it out there, getting involved in that is something that's really missing in a place like India. Okay, some practitioners go against the ideas of supplements or even medications or even vaccines sometimes, and this is where it gets really tricky and shows how unscientific people can be in some cases. They go against the use of these medical interventions when indeed they are needed by a patient. Not every single thing is going to be solved by a perfect plant-based or vegan diet. Humans have a lot of variabilities, and there are times when we need medications and supplements. And when you have people like anti-vaxxers getting in there, you see a real problem. The idea behind science is not to just support some pieces of science when they go along with your worldview. We just have to have a consistent approach to evaluate all science and things that may not go along with your worldview as well, and have a sort of a rational, level-headed approach to these things as well. Okay, we see oversimplification of issues regarding protein and calories. People saying, for example, just eat a broad-based plant-based diet and you're going to be fine. And for many people, that's true. But there are also people for whom it is not true and do need help to increase their protein, or some people consume protein, and the same with calories, okay? We see poor diet quality and a lack of understanding of what constitutes good quality diet. So the use and proper the proper use of whole grains and protein foods, and the appropriate use of dietary fats within limited quantities, and without frying and doing things like that that increase trans fats. There is a lot of very poor quality diet amongst vegans, vegetarians that I see everywhere, but even more so in India. There's a lack of accessibility amongst the global poor for plant-based diets. In India, for example, we see a lot of the plant-based products targeting rich people and being very expensive, whereas we should be making the types of products that are also accessible and highly nutritious and affordable by the poor in the country as well. And this is not something that's hard to do. It's just something that has become a pattern, and that the plant-based industry is, very much targeting the rich population without producing high quality products that are more accessible to the poor. There's a lot of anti-soy propaganda, and that is very anti-scientific, considering that there's great evidence that soy reduces prostate and breast cancer, has excellent protein in terms of the ability to grow the protein sustainability and make it available to humans, and make it into so many different products like soy milk and tofu and other things that are highly palatable and useful in different kinds of recipes and different cultures, and also the fact that it reduces cholesterol somewhat and decreases fractures with long-term use as well. There's great evidence about soy, yet the anti-soy propaganda still persists very heavily, especially in India, much more than in Western countries. We also see a lack of fortification. As I mentioned, B12, but also calcium in plant-based products, especially in the cheap, sort of accessible forms of soy milk. We see very heavy packaging in products that advertise themselves as being sustainable or ecological, but that's false. The type of packaging that is used is devastating to the environment. And just because you have a vegan plant-based milk doesn't make it much less devastating if the packaging is so bad, especially things like Tetra Paks and plastics and everything else that is used. Okay, and what we'd love to see is something like spray-dried soy milk, which is a fantastic vegan product that's tasty alternative to dairy milk, that is cheap, easily stored, has low packaging, but should be supplemented with calcium and B12. We don't see that, and we don't see many efforts to produce and supply fresh soy milk in reusable bottles or homemade soy milk equipment that also teaches us how to add B12 and calcium to our homemade soy milk. So ditching dairy or getting people to quit dairy in India is not going to be healthy unless we give an alternative, for example, soy milk that is high in protein, highly sustainable, not using disposable packaging, or with very, very minimal use of packaging, but emphasizes instead refillable packaging or home production that is also cheap and tasty and fortified with B12 and calcium. Okay, I don't believe that we should be teaching people to substitute dairy until we can provide a dairy alternative that has all of these characteristics. Okay, well, we can for the rich who can afford Tetra Paks, but we should not tell people that these Tetra Paks are sustainable. All right. So now, what do we know so far about plant-based diets overall in terms of looking at the broad-based evidence? Now, I'm not going to get into the evidence of this, but we do see that there is growing evidence of reduced all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, cholesterol, hypertension, certain types of cancers are reduced, dementia, and a few other diseases that we're getting more and more evidence every year to show benefit of healthy plant-based diets. And now when I say healthy plant-based diets, diet quality matters. We're getting newer studies that take into account the quality of the diet. For example, whether you're replacing animal products with refined carbohydrates, etc., or whether you're taking your B12 and so forth. So those studies are giving us better and better information, and there's much more to come. And one thing that we also know about plant-based diets is that we have to be careful about our bone health. There is data from the EPIC Oxford study showing that especially women who are vegan or highly plant-based have more fractures, especially when they are very low body weight. And unfortunately, those studies don't carefully delineate the different levels of low BMI that the vegan women may have who are sustaining more fractures. There were also other problems with the studies as well, but we should be very careful to note that exercise, being too slim and too underweight, not consuming enough calcium, not consuming enough B12, and possibly vitamin D as well, although I think that's more complex than people realize. But people who are low in these elements and low in body weight can have greater amounts of fractures, and these include hip fractures, which are very devastating in older age. So make sure, especially for women, that you're exercising, building up your bone density, eating enough. Do not be too skinny. Have higher amounts of protein and healthy fats, for example, nut butters and things like that in your diet. If you're too underweight, make sure that you're consuming the right amount of calcium and vitamin B12. Okay, so that so we're taking care of all those elements, and hopefully we will then show that there is no disadvantage for plant-based diet and especially veganism over the long run in terms of fractures. Okay, now note that we don't have data showing that vegan diet is superior to other plant-based diets. Okay, there is good data that healthy plant-based diets do reduce cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, all-cause mortality, certain cancers, etc. So we have good evidence showing the benefits of plant-based diets in general, but we don't necessarily have data showing that veganism is particularly superior to all of these other types of plant-based diets. Okay, what we do know is that vegans still have to be careful about optimizing their diet. Okay, you can't just say, hey, I'm vegan and therefore my diet's going to be better, and other people saying, oh no, vegans are worse off, or having these strong views about veganism being superior or inferior. What really is important is having a high quality plant-based diet. And if people are vegan, the same rules apply. We should be mostly whole food. We should be getting the different types of nutrients from a broad-based selection of foods that I'm not going to go into, but other speakers will be going into. Supplementing our B12 and being a little bit careful about some of our individual characteristics. For example, some people may be a little bit lower in iron, so need to increase their iron content of their foods or perhaps take a supplement there, etc. We have to tailor our diets and our medications or supplements accordingly. Some people may be too skinny and need to increase the protein or healthy fat content, nuts and seeds, etc., in their diet. Some people may be vegan but still too fat and may have to reduce fats and reduce carbohydrates from their diet, especially the refined carbohydrates and fats. Okay, but we have to make sure that we're also still following best practices. It's not. Okay, next is that as mentioned already, we had to be careful as plant-based people or vegans regarding unscientific and pseudoscientific variants of a healthy vegan diet, that take away from the healthfulness of plant diet or vegan diet, and careful of things like orthorexia, where people have an unhealthy or an obsessive diet focus and get into weird diet variations that actually harm their health. We want to make sure that we don't oversimplify aspects of what constitutes a healthy plant-based or vegan diet, or make it overly complex and go into details that are unnecessary and outside of the realm of science and our current level of science anyways. We should make sure that our plant-based and vegan diets take an approach that is based on equity and justice and accessible to people of different income levels. And we should make sure we take an ecological approach that includes the impact of packaging and doesn't try to give fake news about packaging and saying, oh, this is an eco packaging, when in fact it's not. We see a lot of this kind of thing that's done by industry. Okay, so as one of the icons of vegan diet and health, Ginny Messina says, or I've heard her say, at least I've heard her say it first, eat the rainbow. Okay, make sure we're consuming our fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, including soy, nuts and seeds, and healthy fats in small amounts, and herbs and spices as well. Those are the main constituents of a whole food, low fat, plant-based diet, but noting that it doesn't have to be zero fat per se. Okay, that depends on the goals we're trying to achieve, and some amount of processed foods can be included as well, because some processed foods aren't so bad. You have to look at the type of processing that's involved. So there are some plant-based meats that are that contain huge amounts of sodium or fat, and there are others that are actually quite moderate in their sodium and low in fat and highly organic, and use great ingredients. So we have to look at processed foods with a rational lens, and we can include some of the best processed foods that are moderately processed and include them. Okay, so where do we get our protein? Beans, lentils, soy, nuts, seeds, whole grains, etc. Okay, make sure we're taking our B12, okay, and that's going to be very important. And when we come back to these anecdotes of people who are on plant-based diets, remember, this is not the same as the science showing that plant-based diet is healthy, but certainly we can draw inspiration and show that, hey, the one thing we can conclude is that some vegans who are doing it right are able to achieve anything. And so that's not necessarily science. That's a little bit of real world knowledge showing that, hey, the potential is there. Now it's up to us to use the science to achieve our best potential. Now, very briefly, I'm going to go through the website Plant-Based Data and show some best ways of using that website to your full advantage. So now I'm going to apologize that I took a little bit too long in the first part of the presentation. And in the second part, we're going to review Plant-Based Data website and discuss how you can optimally use it. So check it out here. The website is plantbaseddata.org. Okay, this website was co-created by myself and Nicholas Carter, who is an environmental researcher, and we worked together very hard on the website. The purpose is that when it comes to studying this topic or any other topic, you want to accumulate and aggregate the best data possible to form your opinions to use for whatever purpose. If I'm going to say, look for articles that talk about plant-based diet and climate change, or cardiovascular disease, or zoonotic disease, it's going to take me tens or even hundreds of hours to find all the best articles that I want to use for my project or my purpose. This project is meant to shorten that time and make the data more easily accessible for anyone and faster to obtain. Now, it is meant for people who are educators, researchers, policymakers, journalists, health professionals, students, and people who are looking deeper into the data. A lot of people want to just consume a short video. This is a source where you can go and look at the actual research and look at the articles that are used to form our opinions, okay? And it's free for everyone, and we are, our website is being used by people all around the world, actually. Those people who are nerdy enough or want to take a very, very in-depth look. So that's the purpose of the website. Now, you can see the front page over here, okay? And I'm going to point out a few things that you should notice right off the bat, okay? The sections are environment, health, zoonosis, and economics and policies. We have key articles with summaries, and we have some podcasts and presentations that we have, and we have a link here that's very important called How to Search the Entire Database. So I want people to hear what I say, but also click on this link and take a look. So here's our first section, environment and food security. We have key articles with summaries, and we have the library. So the summaries are there of many articles, and we have our library where we have literally a couple of thousand or more articles. I don't even know how many that are really in there. The next section is fish and oceans. We have a report which we periodically update, and that gives a good overview of the topic. And then we have a library there on articles regarding fish and oceans. Health and nutrition, again, key articles of summary and the health library. Again, when I talk about library, I mean a repository of academic articles. Zoonosis, we have notes that are sort of summarize the topic about animal agriculture and how that causes pandemics in the past, present in terms of COVID-19, which I guess is wrapping up, in terms of the more dangerous aspects of it, but the risk of future pandemics. And then we have a library there as well. Economics and policy is curated by Nital Jetalal. He's the third member of Plant-Based Data responsible for this section. I myself have curated the section on zoonosis, health and nutrition, but have collaborated with Nicholas Carter on the environment and food security and fish and oceans databases. Okay, so there's our database. Now scrolling down, we have a section here where anytime we add new papers to the database, you can go there and look at the new papers that are added to the database and look at new summaries that we make as well. Now we're a bit behind on summaries over the past year, but we're going to be doing some catching up and some information on us. And very important here, these are podcasts, panels, and videos from our team. So you can look at some of my videos and podcasts, for example, the one regarding the origin of pandemics, dismantling regenerative agriculture, the fundamentals of plant-based diet and health, which I think is very relevant to this talk, where I, in one lecture, sort of go over the main principles and main benefits of plant-based foods versus animal-based foods when done in the healthiest possible way, and how to do it in the healthiest possible way. As well as presentations on animal agriculture and the environmental impact, and one here that's just about general environmental issues. Nicholas Carter has a list of excellent podcasts and videos as well. Nital Jetalal is getting started as well. He's got a couple of podcasts over here and more going to be coming on the way. All right. So now let's take a look at the at some of the information that we have right here. Now, we'll start with key articles summaries. So we are using Google Documents and Google Drive because it's a free resource. It's good for our workflow, but also has some limitations. Now, here are summaries that we make. Now, at the top here are just some tips on how you can use and search the summaries to your advantage. What we are doing with these summaries is we're trying to take what we feel are the most important articles regarding plant foods versus animal foods and the environmental impact, and giving a brief summary of the article. Now, for example, let's just scroll through a little bit and pick an article. This article is called Eating Away at Climate Change with Negative Emissions, Repurposing UK Agricultural Land to Meet Climate Goals by Helen Harwat and Matthew Hayek. And it's published in 2019. Okay, this is the link that if you click on this link, it'll take you to the, it should take you to the actual article online. So I'm just clicking the hyperlink over there. And here we go. We're finding the actual source of the article online. Okay, which is great. It's taking a little bit of time to upload here, but we always provide the link and the title that you can look it up yourself. There it is. There's the article. Okay, another way to look at the article online, let's say this link is somehow not working, you can always highlight, copy, and then paste into a new tab. Now, because of Zoom, it's not letting me doing it, but I can just paste this in there and then Google the article and find it online in that fashion. Okay, let me put this back up here. Okay, so that's how you can look up articles that are in our summaries. And then we provide a summary of the article with what we feel are some of the main important points that we highlight for you. And as you can see, we have a lot of pages of this here. We have over 100 pages of summaries here. Many articles are summarized so that we highlight the best, most important studies, or at least those in our opinion. Now, let's say you want to search the summaries. Okay, let's say you want information regarding dairy or a land use change or something like that. So let's just go, we can hit Control F or Command F on a Mac, Control F on a PC, and we go search, okay? So we open up a little search bar, and make sure we're opening up a search bar within the Google document itself. There we go, find in document, because sometimes you do a search that just does a screen search that's part of your browser. We're not looking for that. We're looking for a search within the Google document itself, okay? And I can just put dairy, okay? And we see that there are 63, the word appears 63 times, and I can go and click through and find articles that are relevant to dairy. I can look up other key terms such as methane. Okay, and find the word methane as it pops up and find articles that are relevant to the word methane, okay? And that's a way that we can search through the database and find, and find articles that are of interest to us, depending on the topic that we're trying to look for. Okay, so that is the summaries, and it works the same with the health library as well. The summaries are there. Okay, now when health and nutrition, there is key articles summaries. Now we have in Fish and Oceans, we have a library, but we also have this fantastic report called the State of the Ocean, where we go through a lot of information and we put all of the references there for anything that we say that you can look up and give an overview of ocean health and the impact of animal agriculture in the ocean. There's a lot of graphics that we've added there. These graphics basically come from academic articles or sometimes Our World in Data, and we go through everything. So you can see all the hyperlinks there. You can click on any of these, okay, and go to the original article online. But we've also numbered all the articles in a reference list at the bottom. So everything that's referenced above in a hyperlink is also referenced at the bottom. And as I mentioned, we periodically will try to keep updating this document. Okay, coming back to the main website. Now here's one of the most challenging things, and a little bit daunting and confusing at first for somebody, but to look in the library itself. So this is the core of our database, is actually the library. So in our library, we've gone to a Google Drive, and what you see here are different folders, okay? For example, a folder called all-cause mortality. There's stuff about aging, alcohol, drugs, Aboriginal and Indigenous people, of course, ancient diets, human revolution, so many different topics there, developing countries, diabetes, different doctors who are well publicized and important in terms of their contribution to the science. Of course, we can't have all of them, but a few are mentioned here. Drug companies, economics, a topic like eggs, the health implications of eggs, and it goes on and on. You can see all the different categories here. Now, so for anybody who's interested in plant-based diet and health and wants to look at the research, please do go to the main library and just browse the different titles of the different categories here. Now let's go into one of these folders, cardiovascular disease. Okay, let's see what we find here. Okay, now anything that has a date in front of it, that is an article. This is a folder that has the title of the article on it. Okay, because the article will be in there, but another couple of documents might be there as well. So that's why we put it into a folder rather than having the document independently in the subfolder called cardiovascular disease. Okay, now here we go with more articles that are just there in the folder of cardiovascular disease. And so as you can see, as we're scrolling down, there are quite a number of articles here, okay? And they're in chronological order by their date of publication. And as we go down, we'll eventually get to articles published right up until 2021. And of course, depending on the folder that we have, we'll have 2022 articles as well. We just keep adding in the best articles that we find and trying to exclude some of the junk that's out there too, I guess. Okay, so we have those articles here. For example, here's this 2017 article. Okay, and what we have here is we have the article itself, which is a PDF, and then there is another document over here, which may provide some extra notes pertaining to this article. Okay, and so that's why that article. Again, it's an article because it starts with a date, okay, but it's in a folder. And I'll click on this 2018 one. See, there's just other some notes there, or sometimes other articles that are associated with that article in there together. But then we also go into these other subfolders. For example, this is the folder called cardiovascular disease, right over here. You can see it. But then I may go cardiovascular disease, CVD, and dairy. Or I might look at some other, let's see, cholesterol and cardiovascular disease, okay? So we might look at some of these subtopics. Now, I'm gonna go CBD and dairy, okay? There's an article there. Wait a second now. I'm looking for something in particular here, and that is, let's say, okay, these are articles here that look at cholesterol and cardiovascular disease. All right, now, okay, now I was just looking for something, and here it is. Here's a good example. Now, we see this folder here says nuts and seeds and CVD, nuts, seeds, and cardiovascular disease. And it says C main folder, nuts and seeds. Okay, so if I click on this folder here, okay, there's nothing in there. Okay, sometimes you might find one article in there, but let's go back to this nuts and seeds and CVD. Okay, now what it's saying is that see the main folder, nuts and seeds. It says C main folder, nuts and seeds. It's important to look at the whole title here. Okay, here's another one that says olive oil, C main folder, oils, non-omega-3, olive oil, cardiovascular disease. Now, the problem that happens is that we're adding so many articles to the database there may be one about nuts and seeds and then cardiovascular disease. So then where do I add that article? I can put that article in the cardiovascular folder under a subfolder called nuts and seeds, but I can also go to the nuts and seeds folder and put it under a subfolder called cardiovascular disease. In order to minimize duplication and the work it takes to add articles to all kinds of different folders, what I've done is just some folders will just tell you to say, hey, please redirect yourself to this other folder where you'll find this topic of nuts and seeds and cardiovascular disease. So let's do that. Let's go to the main medical articles, okay? And then go down to nuts and seeds. Okay. Here we go, nuts and seeds, okay? And I'll click on that folder. And then I will see cardiovascular disease and nuts and seeds. So I'll go there and I'll see a couple of pertinent articles, one from 2022 and one from 2018, that talk about nuts and seeds and cardiovascular disease. Now, let's go back a little bit here. Go back to nuts and seeds, go back to the medical articles folder. If you recall, there was one about olive oil and cardiovascular disease, and it said go to the main folder called oil, non-omega-3. So we'll scroll down to here and we'll find oils, okay, it's oil general, non-omega-3. Okay, so there we go there. We'll go there and then we'll go to olive oil because it said go to like that. And then we'll see another folder called cardiovascular disease. And we'll see these articles here that we've added regarding olive oil and cardiovascular disease. Okay, so again, just going back to our general medical articles and our cardiovascular disease, and then going down to olive oil. Okay, just showing, reminding you again, so it says olive oil, see main folder, oils, non-omega-3, olive oil, cardiovascular disease. Okay, now I have here these little arrows, but sometimes we may just see a little dash. Okay, it just may have a dash. It means the same thing. Okay, just sort of as we're naming things, we made slight changes and started adding little arrows, but it could be a dash too. Okay, and that's one of the main things that we can, one main ways we can use the library of plant-based data. Let's go back to the main plant-based data website again, and just click on this, how to search the entire database by keyword. Okay, so it's going to remind you the same things that I've told you right now, and show us how the libraries are organized and how you can search them. Okay, now some articles have the asterisks beside them. Okay, a single asterisk beside an article means that it's an important article. 3 asterisks means that, hey, this is of great significance. And 2 asterisks mean that, hey, this is a very important article, and so important that we've actually summarized it. Now, of course, logically, this should have 3 asterisks, this should have 2, but just we started with 1 and 2, and then we started having 3 for some of the things that I just wanted to highlight people when they're looking through the database. Let's go back and see that in the library itself. Okay, so let's go choose this time the environment library. Okay, and let's choose a subfolder like climate change. All right, and again, reminder that anything that starts with a date, a year of publication is an article, but if it's in a folder, that means that there are more than one article, more than one document inside that folder. So if you go here, you see this, there's multiple PDFs over here, okay, that we've added into that folder, because some of them might be a summary, some of them might be a longer version, etc. Now, coming back here, okay, we see that article, that 2014 article, has 2 asterisks. This one over here by the IPCC has 2 asterisks. That means this article is what we consider to be a very important article, and we have provided a summary of it in our summaries. So if you go to these key articles with summaries, you'll find a summary of that same article. That over here, you find the full article, okay? Going in there again, the IPCC, and we see some notes, we see the article, and we see some other relevant document that we've provided there, okay? So that should be useful for you too. Now, coming back to the main article, main website, at the top, now maybe we should make this a little bit bigger, but we want to also show you there is our top facts. So Nicholas Carter has mostly done this work, showing on certain topics, top facts. So some of the most important articles regarding climate change, land use deforestation, biodiversity loss, inefficiency in feed crops, etc. So showing some of the main articles and references. All the references are hyperlinked over there, okay? And you can then click on any of these links and go to the articles. And what Nicholas is doing is just trying to, for some of these big topics where we have hundreds of articles, so show us here, what are the top 5 or 10 or 15 articles that we should be keeping in mind, okay? So that is our top facts. Then we also have our reports, which is our Fish and Oceans report, and there's another report there regarding the critique of so-called regenerative agriculture. And the last thing I'm going to show you is this tab called Online Resources. So when it comes to our major topics, food and environment, okay, we have provided some links regarding the important organizations who we very much respect and think they do excellent work in terms of explaining and educating regarding the science of food and environment. And we put the links there, okay? We're not trying to always just self-promote plant-based data. We want to highlight some of the other great people doing excellent work. And of course, we are trying to be concise. We don't have every website out there, but these are the ones that we have found to be super important and of great quality as well, okay? There's some practical guides and everything as well in terms of food guides and so forth. Health and nutrition, we promote or sort of advocate or support or consider these people as doing excellent work in the field. So there's Dr. Michael Greger's link, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, Mike the Vegan, Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, and I've got to give a great shout out to Dr. Shireen Kassam and also her sister Zara Kassam, amazing family of doctors doing incredible work. So there's Plant-Based Canada from Zara Kassam and Shireen Kassam's website. Now, many of these people have done many things. They've got their website here, but they've also published books. We can't have everything on our website, so advertise, sorry, not advertise, but have a link to the book and have a link to the website and other links as well. But we're just trying to cover the best we can while still being concise. So just note that some of these excellent teams and individuals will have their website, books, and other resources as well. And we may not have every link to all of their work that is relevant. Some practical guides there in terms of nutrition guides by a very evidence-based and scientific people, are a fantastic nutritionist. I think she's got her PhD, so she is a doctor. Jenny Messina, Plantrition Project, IVU, Vegan Nutrition Guide for Adults, PCRM, and so forth. So there's also PCRM, Making South Asian Recipes More Nutritious. This is an excellent link for people in South Asia. It's features sort of India, but I think it's very relevant to people all over South Asia. And We want to be in solidarity with our friends in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and all others who have a South Asian type of diet and would like to make it more nutritious, okay, and plant-based. All right, the economics and policy links over here, it's quite big. And then pandemics and zoonosis, okay? So you can see some of our links towards other organizations, books, publications that we think are of great importance, trying to be as concise as we can, as I mentioned. And a big shout out to A Well-Fed World, an excellent organization, and who we're doing some work with in partnership as well, okay? There's a donation link over there as well for anybody who would like to support our work. And if you are donating from the United States, you'll get a 501c tax receipt as well. And this is for work that is in partnership with A Well-Fed World. And I think that about sums it up. I will just come back to the home and remind people about the link here, how to search the entire database by keywords. A little bit of practice will get you through the database. I think one more thing is that I want to mention is that if you are in the, and I should have mentioned this earlier, if you are in the library, let's say the environment library, okay, and you want to search for something, you search in Drive, okay? I can search in Drive over here. Now, because I'm an owner of this database, I'm an editor of the database, I can search the entire database in Google Drive. If you are not the owner of the database or an editor of the database, and there's only a couple of editors, for example, for this is myself and Nicholas Carter. Anybody else who's searching the website will get this search bar, but you will get incomplete results when you search, okay? So please don't use the search bar. What you're gonna have to do is manually go through the different topics and find the articles that you're looking for, so get familiar with that. The other thing that you can do is, because it is Google Drive, it gives you the ability to download the database to your own computer, okay, or to your own Google Drive. So you can take this entire database that we have and download it to your own computer or to your own Google Drive, and then you can fully use the search capabilities when it's on your own laptop or on your Google Drive. And then what you could do is, because it's going to take up a lot of room on your drive, you can just delete it, okay? And note that we're going to always be making updates, so you may want to just re-download it some other place at some other time if you're doing a lot of searching, okay? And the last thing is, when it comes to our key articles with summaries, of course, it's a Google document, so you can download that too, okay? In whatever format you want to download it, as a Google Doc or as a PDF. And so all of our work is free and to share around the world, you know. So please feel, you know, so please do share our website and the work that we do. Encourage people to be more science-oriented when looking at the topic of plant-based versus animal, plant-based diet versus animal foods, and enjoy the benefits for health, but also for environment and for helping us prevent future pandemics as well, as global food security and being in tune with the needs of 8 billion people on our planet, many of whom are poor and have food security issues, and how we can use best practices to provide the healthiest diets for everyone. Okay. With that, I'll wrap up, and again, thank the organizers of the Health Revolution Summit, and I hope that this has been beneficial. Take care and speak to you soon.